This is 10 Questions for Time, and we're here with former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. Thank you very much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Now, you're currently working on a campaign for climate change, which is, can you say the name?
It's Tick, 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 Time for Climate Justice.
And our first question from our reader, do you think world leaders are putting enough effort into combating global warming?
I don't think so. And I think this is why we need the energy and the involvement of everyone. This is our planet. Climate change affects us all. We cannot and should not leave it to the leaders alone.
The Kyoto Protocol, which expires in 2012, what changes has that actually brought about since it was signed, and has it been effective in fighting climate change?
I think it has been effective in the sense that it has helped raise awareness. Today we are all aware of the climate change and its impact. Obviously, we cannot pretend that we've achieved everything that Kyoto Agreement had in mind. The awareness is here today, and people realize that unless we take steps to arrest climate change, we are heading towards catastrophic consequences that will be irreversible.
What do you think are the realistic expectations for the next round of discussions in Copenhagen?
We are not there yet, but we shouldn't give up. I'm a stubborn optimist, so I should warn you. And I believe we should maintain the pressure on the leaders.
I'd like to talk for a little bit about your career as at the United Nations. What do you consider to be the greatest achievements of the UN during your tenure?
I will have to say the fight against poverty, and the fact that we got the heads of states to agree to the Millennium Development Goals, the 8 Millennium Development Goals, to uplift people out of poverty. And for the first time, we came up with a common agenda for development.
In a similar vein, Heather Wright in Ontario wants to know, what do you think the greatest failure of the UN and the world community was during your time there?
I would have to say our failure to stop the war in Iraq. Some of us knew it was going to be a disaster and cause lots of problems. Tried very hard to stop it. The Council did not vote for military action, and yet we had action, and we all see the results.
Do you think that President Bush acted illegally or by going to war without UN sanctions?
I think my position is clear, and I'm on record.
Is that a yes?
Check the record.
Going forward, Monica Mihai wants to know, what do you see as the biggest issues and challenges for the UN over the next decade?
There are challenges and issues, but not just for the UN. It's for all of us. We live in a world where we have to understand we are all in the same boat, and one cannot be secure at the expense of the other. One cannot be prosperous at the expense of the other. And a world in which extreme poverty and immense wealth live side by side is simply not sustainable. When we say, what should the UN do? How can the UN do this? We are basically saying, how do we get governments, your government and mine, to act cooperatively in the common interest? We saw a bit of that during the financial crisis when they met in London and in Washington in November. There was a sense of urgency and despair that it pulled them together. They were thinking of working together. They were beginning to work together to save the global economy and the financial system. Now that some people are rushing ahead saying we are probably out of the crisis, we are falling back to the old bad habits of protecting our national interests, sectional interests. Protectionism is beginning to rear its head again. And if they do not cooperate and work together, and what we are trying to achieve fails, who has failed, the UN or the individual countries, particularly the powerful countries?
We have a question from a reader, Faizan Syed in Copenhagen, who wants to know whether you think that the election of President Barack Obama in the U.S. And his efforts to accomplish this have brought around any changes in the world's perception of the United States, whether they think more positively or more negatively about the country under his administration.
I think President Obama has started extremely well. There's lots of goodwill and support for him and the administration around the world. He has enormous challenges, both here and abroad. And I think we all need to help him succeed, and we should start by reducing expectations.
Reducing expectations for what he can accomplish.
What he can accomplish. High expectations can cause problems for politicians, particularly when you consider the nature of the challenges he has inherited.
This one comes from Jose Francisco Cruz in Manila. He wants to know, how does one become a UN Secretary General?
By accident. Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, because it's not the sort of thing that you wake up and said, at the age of 15, I decided I was going to become Secretary General of the UN and worked towards it. But what I would say, whatever challenge or assignment he takes on, he should work as hard as he can, make whatever contribution that he can, and one thing leads to the other. Maybe he will have a chance, although I'm hoping that in future we are going to see some women secretaries general, so he may have to wait his turn.
Any good candidates you see so far?
Well, the world is full of good people.